Good evening, everyone. I know that it's difficult times, challenging times, and I hope that these few words of inspiration will assist everyone to get some chizuk. I thank Rabbi Gruenstein for inviting me here to join you this evening. One of the quotes that Rav Kook had said was "Churban bayit hasheni hi hayesod lebinyan bayit hashlishi." The destruction of the second temple would serve as the foundation, the premise for the construction of the third temple. And the obvious question is, what exactly is Rav Kook suggesting? What is he qualifying with regards to this strange statement? How is it that the destruction of the second temple can possibly serve as the construction of the third? And it seems rather obvious that what Rav Kook is telling us is something that is indicative of our Jewish history consistently. We have always been a people who have subscribed to the past in order to be able to perpetuate our future. Without our ability to reflect upon the past, there is no way for us to be able to infuse or propose or to entertain our future as well. And therefore, in every single destruction, every challenge, every trial, every tribulation, we see them as things of the past, but something that escorts us every single day in order to be able to reflect upon them. Why did they happen? What do they mean to us? How exactly or what exactly is the message that they infuse to us so that we can reconstruct for tomorrow? And therefore, yes, if a person reflects upon the Churban Bayit Sheni, the destruction of the second temple, understanding or at least reflecting upon why it happened. And by the way, that could be subject to interpretation, even though the Gemara gives or entertains a number of reasons for it. Every person could have their own response, but at the very least, we have to ask or beg that question in order to arrive at Binyan Bayit Shlishi, in order to entertain the reconstruction of the third temple as a result or stemming forth from the destruction of the second. The most obvious example of this is the establishment of the state of Israel. We know that one of the questions that begged itself to many people for a very, very long time to this very day is how could it be that there was a Holocaust? And many decided to reject HaKadosh Baruch Hu's existence, and many had decided to embrace it even more. But one of the answers, one of the responses was that me'afela la'ora, mishiabud l'gula, Mikimi ma'afardal me'ashpot yarim evyon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us from the ashes of destruction, from the ash turds of destruction, from the garbage heaps, and raised us to Leoshivi im nedivim im nedive amo, to sit amongst the most special of people, to build Medinat Yisrael from the ashes of destruction of the Holocaust. And this has classically been a Jewish response. One of the things, or one of the catastrophe or catastrophic consequences of what happened a month ago is that we proclaimed with the establishment of Medinat Yisrael, never again. And yet here we were witnessing something that happens very much in front of our faces, and that we would witness even in today's time. And once again, it repeated itself. Catastrophe, destruction, utter tragedy. And one of the questions is, how exactly do we deal? How exactly do we cope? It is not clear exactly what our response should be, but it is very clear that our response has to be that we long, or that we will deal or cope somehow, that we ask ourselves, what is this telling us? How can we deepen and further our religious subservience to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How can we reroute our loyalty and realign our allegiance to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And one of the things that's interesting is that we all know that the war began on Simchat Torah. Prior to Simchat Torah, Chag HaSukkot, which is marked by the Arba Minim. The heart of the Arba Minim is the Etrog. The Etrog is called the Pri-Eitz Hadar. Chazal say in the Gemara and the Talmud, Pri-Eitz Hadar, Pri Shetam Eitzo Upiryo Shaveh, that the bark, the tree of the Etrog, has the same ta'am, the same taste as the Pri, as the Etrog itself. And the obvious question is, what exactly does this mean? I don't think anyone would embark, no pun intended, upon taking a bite out of the bark of the tree of the etrog to see if the ta'am, the taste of the bark of the tree, is the same as the fruit. What does this mean? And Rav Kook explains that very often in human nature, we are always prone to look for the perot, to look for the fruits, to look for the ends, for the result, for the consequence. Sometimes we disregard and don't pay enough attention to the process that gets us there. And what the Gemara is teaching us is that we have to realize that getting to the fruit no doubt is valuable unto itself, but it's arriving at the fruit, the effort, the earnestness, tilling the soil, plowing the field, planting the tree, placing the seeds, fertilizing the soil, turning it over. Only that leads to the fruit itself, to enjoying the scent, the reach, the beautiful, wondrous taste of the fruit itself. So getting to the fruit is a large part of the process. The process itself is just as tasty and just as enjoyable, or can be just as appreciated as when we arrive at the consequence, the fruit itself. And what we have to recognize is that when it comes to Eretz Yisrael, to Am Yisrael, Tam Eitzo Upiryo Shaveh, the process of the redemption, the process of us building Eretz Yisrael, V'rishtem ota v'yishavtem ba, settling and inheriting Eretz Yisrael, is procedural. It is not something that bears fruits immediately, yet it is part of the eights, planting the soil, tilling the soil, rooting the tree, that eventually will allow us to enjoy the fruits themselves. And this is something that's very important for us to remember. We are still involved in Ein Lecha Ketz Meguleh Mizeh. There is no greater demonstration of revelation, as the Gemara, the Talmud says, as finding the fruits, the Ilanei Srak, the trees in Eretz Yisrael giving forth the fruit. But we are very much involved in still planting the trees and still rooting ourselves in this land. But eventually, as a result of our efforts, our earnestness, and the sweat that we bear upon our brow, and yes, unfortunately, the sacrifice that we give as well, we will be able to bear those fruits. Everyone offers today, when we greet people, classically we say to one another, we should hear Besarot Tovot Yeshuot V'Nechamot. I always pause when I hear this as someone who himself mourned the loss of a child. And I explain to people that when it comes to Shiva, when a person is sitting Shiva, Lo Aleichem, when a person is sitting in mourning, during the Shiva process, it doesn't really dawn upon that person the loss. Sure, they feel the pain and they understand, but it has not yet been situated within that person's life. They don't know yet how to make sense of it within their daily tidings. And so Yeshuot, salvation, is something that you need immediately. But Nechamot, to be truly comforted, that's not necessarily during the Shiva. That's way afterwards, weeks afterwards, months afterwards, years afterwards. I still could use Nechama, comfort, to this very day. And I appreciate when people understand and say that to me, because it's something that I do need and that I do welcome. Well, the same thing is with regards to where we find ourselves today. We find ourselves in the Yeshuot. The Yeshuot are the trees that we are planting. There's no question that we need an army and that we need forces and that we need infantry and combat in order to assure the Yeshuah, the nitzachon, the victory of Am Yisrael, in terms of our combat and in terms of assuring our victory within the context of a war. However, let us understand that after B'shah Tovah Mutzlachat, when we are Matzliach and we can see the victory amongst us, we still have to arrive at Yeshuot afterwards, Nechamot. Nechamot is comforting. We have to be able to comfort one another. We have to remember what happened to us prior to the war. We have to bridge those gaps. We have to once again rectify the disparity, the polarization that existed amongst the Jewish people in order to arrive at that pri, at that etrog, at that wondrous scent and fragrance and taste that the etrog offers. The nechamot will take a much longer time for us to arrive at. It is something that we have to focus on as well. And so I quote the great Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau, when he served as the chief rabbi of Israel. He wrote his book as a survivor of Bergen-Belsen at the age of 6. He always says an amazing thing that always dawns upon me. And that is, he classically expresses the Holocaust taught the Jewish people how to die together. Medinat Yisrael, the state of Israel, has to teach the Jewish people how to live together. Living together is much more difficult. Dying together, we know what it means. The people, we all joined hands. Our forefathers joined hands in the gas chambers. They all sang Ani Mamin together and proclaimed Shema Yisrael. No one had any differences in that regard. But living together is much more difficult. And that's something that requires nechamot. We have to have compassion, empathy, understanding. There's a campaign that's going around Eretz Yisrael now, which really irks me. And that is, if you hear the TV or the radio, they'll say, Ein yamin, ein smol, yesh rak achdut. There's no right, there's no left, there's only unity. You know what? That's completely not true. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Yesh yamin, yesh smol, tamid yeh yamin, v'tamid yeh smol. There always will be right, and there'll always be people on the left. But the point is, if we really learn a lesson from it, is that regardless of our differences, that doesn't mean that we have to kill each other. It doesn't mean that we have to be at each other's throats. It doesn't mean that we can't be tolerant of one another. It doesn't mean that we can't listen, at least to the opinion of others. That has to be the point of return. That has to be where the Nechama comes from, to agree to disagree. The Gemara in Eruvin, and with this I conclude, tells us that Hillel and Shammai, they argued with one another over and over again, and yet the Gemara says, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim. Nonetheless, each one is a proper opinion situated close to the Shechina, the divinity of Hashem. And yet, halacha kebeit Hillel. That's beautiful to say, but in the end of the day, the halacha is like Beit Hillel. Why? If Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim, both of them are acceptable. Why do we paskin like Beit Hillel? The Gemara says, Shehen ayu aluvin v'nochin mimenu. Beit Hillel were people who were more flexible, more tolerant, more considerate of the opinions of others. They were always willing to listen to what Beit Shammai had to say. They always argued with them. They didn't agree with them, but they always listened to them. We need more listening amongst Am Yisrael. We need more listening amongst our trees in order to plant firmly those roots in order to arrive at the perot. We need more nechamot after that yeshuot. And if we remember this and embrace it, then hopefully we will truly be able to appreciate the nuance of what it means tam eitzo upirio shaveh. We will realize that all of the processes, all of the difficulties, the obstructions that we had to arrive at the pre were very part and parcel of the process of getting to that pre, that fruit as well. We'll appreciate it, we'll enhance it, we'll embrace it. And as a result of that, we'll also be able to truly proclaim, as we do every day now, and truly appreciate the Besorot Tovot, Yeshuot, which is yet to come, V'nechamot, which we all can be a part of making happen. We should only know good things, do good tidings, appreciate them, and be a part of our nation's salvation. Am Yisrael Chai, Shalom al Yisrael. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Hammer, very much. And I didn't pre-warn the tzibor that Rabbi Hammer, amongst his many qualities, is extremely honest. And when he says it doesn't work this way, that during Shiva you wish for Nechama, and then afterwards, all of a sudden, you don't need it, that's just part of something that I think we all needed to hear. And that is that we're going to need a lot of Yeshuot and Nechamot even after this war is over. When the acute and immediate danger is no longer, there's still going to be what to do. And allow me to end with the vort from the founder of the Daf Yomi, Rav Meir Shapira. As we all know, Yeshayahu Hanavi prophesizes that in the future, Gar Ze'ev im Keves. Said Rav Shapira, but in the Teva of Noach, they all lived together. A snake slept next to a baby, and a lion slept next to Noach, and no one got hurt. So what's the big deal? And said Rav Meir Shapira, that was during a Mabul. Let's see a Ze'ev and a Keves live together when there is no Mabul. And that, I think, is going to be our biggest challenge. When the Mabul is over, are we going to be able to live together?